Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have Donald Trump's first message to Russia since being inaugurated, and it is very interesting in terms of Trump's strategy in ending this war. And it's not just a one sided situation where he's in bed with Russia. Trump wants a fair deal between Russia and Ukraine. That's why he's still funding Ukraine. He doesn't want them losing the leverage in a negotiation with Russia. And everyone's asking me, how long will this take to get solved? It's really impossible to say, but certainly there's going to be a lot more positive movement towards peace now that Trump is in. Zelensky and Putin are both on record admitting before Trump got in during that lame duck period with Biden that, yeah, there's going to have to be some type of peace deal that's worked out here. And Trump has said in his first message, this is a Truth Social post, he's talking about Russia, and the formatting of this is very interesting. So he starts off by saying, that he likes Russia. I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people and always had a very good relationship with President Putin. And despite the radical left's Russia hoax, we must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War, losing almost 60 million lives in the process. With all of that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a very big favor. Settle now and stop the ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse if we don't make a deal soon. I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president, over with. So Trump is coming out and giving Russia a threat, saying that we're going to tax you and put high-level tariffs on your country and other countries that also align with Russia, some of those Eastern European countries. So very interesting to see that this is the route Trump is taking. Obviously, this is all part of a negotiation. You're going to come out and really try and gain an upper hand over Russia and also Ukraine to a degree. Zelensky also came out and said that he wants U.S. troops at the Ukrainian border, whatever that means. I would imagine it's going to be NATO troops. I don't know if the United States is going to have to send troops there to facilitate some type of peace deal, but I think Zelensky understands that there's going to be a new border with Russia and Ukraine, and it's going to include those two annexed territories that are now going to become a part of Russia. And that just comes to the whole idea of that land is never going to go back to Ukraine unless NATO gets involved in the war directly. Because it's not like Ukraine has the troops to mount an offensive to get that land back. So unless NATO involves directly, which, by the way, the European countries don't even want. So people are going to start moaning. They're going to start crying. Why does Ukraine have to give up land? Okay, well, if you want to escalate the war further, the only way you get that land back is... I guess you could really threaten Russia, but the problem with Russia is they've already lost so much, and if Putin retreats fully, it is going to be a total loss, and the Russian people are not going to be happy at all. And so Putin will be able to spin this as positive propaganda if they're able to get some land in Ukraine, although let's be honest, they wanted a lot more, and they wanted it done a lot quicker, and they wanted to lose a lot less military equipment with a lot less money spent on this war, which is good for the Ukrainians. They definitely fought this off, certainly with the help of advanced technology from NATO, but still. This is the whole thing. It's give and take. They're going to want that land to be able to settle. If the peace deal doesn't include that land that they currently have, which I'm sure they would already considered annexed, there's going to be no peace deal. Let's be honest. Unless NATO wants to directly get involved and drive Russia out of that land in eastern Ukraine, which is now presumably going to be part of Russia. And then at that point, there's no way that's going to happen because the war, it seems like, is de-escalating. And it seems like everyone's saying, all right, let's settle this. And even Putin came out and said that he wanted to settle this, but he also didn't want there to be, because this is what everyone's been saying, if you settle with Russia, they're just going to rearm at the new border and then reinvade. That's why there's the whole idea, which originally came out after Trump won in November, that Trump wanted a demilitarized zone of a certain amount of miles in between the new Russian-Ukrainian border. And they're like, well, who's going to patrol that zone? And the idea was that it would be NATO troops, which could be an issue if something happens with Russia, and now there's direct involvement with NATO troops in Russia if they're at the Ukrainian border. But none of this is going to be simple. The idea is, it is de-escalating. It does seem like both Zelensky and Putin want the war to end. Certainly, there was an immediate sentiment shift after Trump won, with a lot of the NATO countries realizing, the European countries, Biden and his administration realizing that there's going to be a completely different kind of tone to this war once Trump gets in. It's going to be a lot more peace and negotiations. And so that's why they authorized the long range missiles to be sent into Russia. And you say, well, why would you escalate? It's just making peace harder. Well, basically it's a negotiation tactic to say that NATO is still on Ukraine's side. And the problem for Ukraine would be if Trump just abandoned Ukraine and said, this is terrible, because there's a lot of Republican supporters that really do not like Ukraine. They think we've wasted a ton of money. It's a little bit more complicated than that. If you've got a chance to weaken, this is what I'll say. If you've got a chance to weaken a foreign adversary without any bloodshed of your own soldiers, it's an interesting proposition. But on the other hand, it's not that simple, because you are directly escalating a war with your funding. So now you're turning yourselves against Russia. Now Russia understands the United States is against them because they're funding the war against you, and they're giving the people you're fighting better technology than you have. So that's why this is all very complicated. Now, the good thing is it's NATO, so it's not just the United States. The European countries, they're in more danger than the U.S., obviously, against Russia. But at the end of the day, in terms of a global war, it's really not going to matter with the advanced weaponry we have at our disposal at this point. If a country feels threatened, like they're on the brink of destruction, or, it could get very, very ugly. So you're trying to avoid escalation of this war. And so, listen, I think Trump is going to get this done. Hopefully, you can't really put a timetable on it, but the hope is it happens within 3 to 6 months. He said he would end it likely within 3 months. I don't know if that's realistic at this point, but at least it does seem like there is going to be some type of peace. And what I was saying is Putin went out of his way to say, I want this thing to be over, to where it's not like there's going to be any type of invasions. And obviously, it's Putin just saying that. It's like, who knows? You really can't take him at his word. He's just saying it publicly. But still, it's kind of encouraging to see Putin say that. So that is the current situation. This is a strategic message to Russia saying, and this is why, Trump was not going to stop funding Ukraine, because you immediately hurt Ukraine's ability to negotiate with Russia, because now it's going to look like the United States is not on their side. So why would Russia settle for something? The idea is you want both sides to settle and come in the middle and give up certain things that they wanted to reach a middling agreement that's seen as more so fair. Now, obviously, nothing's really fair, especially in a situation like this, especially Western liberals are going to be very mad. How do they give up land? You can't invade other countries. But that's what happens in the world. It's unfortunate. And so that's why we're trying to stop this in its tracks. You're not getting that land back unless you want to escalate the war and then really threaten nuclear destruction. So it's all a risk assessment, basically. And I'm guessing Trump will get this done. Both Zelensky and Putin have said they want to get this done. And there's another interesting thing with Zelensky. He said he wanted, or it was reported, he asked Trump to come to the inauguration 3 different times, and Trump denied him, which, very, very smart by Trump. The problem is, when you're about to go into a negotiating period and you're the moderator, like the United States probably will be, or I would assume will be, you really don't want to show favoritism. But certainly, you want, the thing is, you want to keep funding Ukraine because you don't want to make it seem like Ukraine is dead in the water and then Russia takes advantage and gets an amazing deal. That's also something you don't want. But you kind of want to split it down the middle and be non-biased. So you bring Zelensky along, it becomes a little bit of a problem. But this message, he's saying, listen, Russia, you need to solve this right now. And he talks about their economy and how, so it's kind of a stern message from Trump to Russia, delivering a warning. And I thought someone else told me that there was another thing with Trump where he said he didn't think Putin wanted to end the war. Putin's just saying it publicly. We'll see how true that actually is when it comes time to negotiate within the coming months, or however long it ends up taking to get some type of negotiation. And then obviously the other big thing that I haven't discussed when it comes to negotiating, what is Russia going to give up exactly in terms of military wise? Will it be anything? Or will it just be they get that land, the war stops, and then what happens with Ukraine joining NATO? Because that's going to be another thing that Russia wants. I don't know if they're going to want it indefinitely or like a 20-year period where they can't join NATO. There's a clear problem, obviously, Russia has with NATO getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I mean, any country in the East would have that issue. I mean, that's a massive military agreement with the number one most powerful country in the world, kind of moving the chess pieces around in Europe. And certainly you get closer and closer and closer to your border, you're going to see it as an issue. But, you know, I think with Trump, it's a different component. With liberals, when they were in power, they really made Russia the enemy, which you can do because they invaded. But in terms of solving this and moving forward and having a more peaceful world, Trump's approach is a lot more acceptable in terms of potential world peace. Well, you never get world peace, but just peace within Europe, because the Russians view him as a lot more, fair. Obviously, you want to talk about the Russia hoax and all that type of stuff. That was more so liberals coping because they lost the election. But I think Russians view Trump as more fair. And so you're talking about him being a moderator in a peace deal. It's probably going to be better that it's Trump. Liberals, I'm not even sure what their plan was if Harris would have won. I really don't know. Would there be a peace deal? It didn't seem like they really wanted to end the war from what I've seen. I really didn't hear. I don't even remember what Harris' stance on the war was. Were they trying to end? I don't even remember. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.